My boyfriend had a friend group, 3 guys and 1 girl. Before I ever met them, he gave me a warning that I still remember word for word. If you ever do anything to upset that girl, we're over. Immediately. I nodded, pretending to take it lightly, but inside I was intrigued. Every group has that one perfect girl, the one everyone protects, the one no one dares to question, and I've never been the type to worship someone like that. Derek looked at me with that serious, protective expression that made my roommates roll their eyes whenever I mentioned him. I mean it, Sarah. Emily isn't just a friend. She's the most important person in my life. If you want to be with me, you'll respect her. You'll look out for her. I smiled sweetly, keeping my tone calm. Of course. Your friends are my friends. I'm sure Emily and I will get along just fine. When I told my roommates about that little warning, they lost it. You're the prettiest girl on campus, one of them snapped. And you're letting some guy tell you to play nice with another girl like she's royalty? You'll regret it. They stormed out, fuming. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I fixed my hair, grabbed Derek by the arm, and said with a smile, "Come on, we don't want to keep your friends waiting." When we walked into the cafe, I saw her instantly. Emily. She was sitting right in the center of the table wearing a white dress and a smile so innocent it almost looked rehearsed. 2 guys were sitting on either side of her. Both handsome, both looking way too comfortable around her. That was all I needed to see. She was the sun, and they were her orbit. I'd expected her to be distant or arrogant, but instead she jumped up and ran toward me, grabbing my hands like we were best friends already. "You must be Derek's girlfriend. You're gorgeous. Guys, this is Sarah." Her enthusiasm was almost too much, but the flicker in her eyes gave her away. She was sizing me up. Ryan, the one with glasses, gave me a quick handshake and forced smile. James, the tall one with the buzz cut, didn't even try to hide his dislike. I met both their eyes and smiled wider. Emily still had my hands in hers, her voice as bright as her fake little halo. "So what were you thinking falling for Derek? He's such a mess." Derek laughed and ruffled her hair like she was a kid. "Don't tease. You're in one of your moods again." Then he took off his jacket and placed it over her chair. "You always get cold." The moment froze. Everyone went quiet. Emily tilted her head toward me with a small pout. "Aren't you jealous, Sarah? He's spoiling me right in front of you." Derek's expression tensed, as if he was bracing for drama, but I just smiled, calm and polite. "Of course not. Derek told me you're like his little sister. Now that I've met you, I totally get it. You're adorable." Her smile froze for just a second. The guys relaxed again, not realizing what had just happened. Emily recovered quickly, pretending to blush. "You're different from the others. Derek's exes always hated me. I tried to be their friend, but they were so cruel." I smiled, keeping my tone warm. "Maybe they just didn't know how sweet you are." Her eyes flickered again. Confusion, irritation, and something else. Then dinner arrived, and I could feel it, the tension building under Emily's perfect surface. Moments later, she gasped. A bit of soup had spilled across her white dress. Before I could even react, Derek shoved past me and grabbed a napkin. "Emily, are you okay?" James glared at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. I knew it. I knew she'd be trouble. Ryan crossed his arms. "First day meeting her and she's already accidentally hurting Emily? Really?" Derek turned to me, his voice sharp. "Sarah, apologize to her. Now." Emily buried her face in her hands, but I saw it. That small, smug smile behind her fingers. Most girls would have snapped, maybe even walked out, but not me. I let my eyes fill with tears, just enough to shimmer under the light. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't see you when I reached for the soup. I swear it was an accident." My voice trembled just right. "I really like all of you. I was just so nervous. I'd never hurt anyone, especially you." Emily froze, caught off guard. Her little performance had just been outplayed. "Of course," she said finally, forcing a shaky laugh. "Don't blame Sarah, guys. She didn't mean it." Derek looked between us, unsure of what to believe. He hugged me awkwardly, guilt flashing in his eyes. But before he could say anything, Emily clapped her hands. "Okay, let's just forget it and go swimming. Derek, you promised to teach me, remember?" He hesitated. "Yeah, sure." And just like that, everyone followed her lead again, as if nothing had happened. I smiled to myself, quietly watching her walk ahead. She really thought she'd won, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. The pool area glowed under soft yellow lights. I stood near the edge, watching Emily giggle as she dipped her toes in the water. She wore a floral swimsuit, modest but perfectly chosen to make her look delicate, the kind of girl who always needed saving. The boys gathered around her, of course. Derek adjusted the straps of her swimsuit. James tossed her a towel, and Ryan stood nearby, arms crossed, pretending not to watch her too closely. I'd seen this scene before. Different people, same energy. The perfect girl surrounded by her loyal guards. I slipped off my sandals and tied my hair into a ponytail. The sound made them all glance my way. Emily noticed first. Her smile faltered for just a second, then she turned it into something sweet and innocent. "Sarah, you came too. But do you even know how to swim?" "Not really," I said calmly. "Maybe Derek can teach me." The air shifted. Derek froze, his hand still holding Emily's towel. Emily tilted her head, pretending to think. "Oh, but he promised me first. Remember, Derek, you said you'd help me practice tonight." Her voice was light, but her eyes were sharp. Derek hesitated. "Right, I did promise. Just give me a bit, okay?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'll manage." The water was cool as I stepped in, goosebumps rising on my skin. I didn't miss the way the other guys looked, especially Derek. He was trying not to stare, but he failed miserably. Emily noticed too. She let out a playful shriek, grabbing Derek's arm dramatically as if she'd seen a bug. "Derek, I'm scared! Don't let go!" He steadied her, muttering something about how she needed to relax. From where I stood, the sight was almost pathetic. Her wrapped around him, the perfect picture of fake vulnerability. Then a voice came from behind me. "Need a hand, gorgeous?" A guy I didn't know, tall, confident, maybe a student from another class, smiled down at me. Before I could respond, Derek's voice cut through the air. "She's my girlfriend." "Back off." The stranger raised an eyebrow, looking between Derek and Emily clinging to his arm. "Yeah? You sure about that? Doesn't look like it from here." The jab landed perfectly. Derek turned red. "Watch it, man." "Hey," I said quickly, giving the stranger a polite smile. "I'm fine, really. Thanks for offering." He winked. "If you ever get tired of this circus, call me." He handed me a slip of paper and walked away. Emily giggled behind me, her tone dripping with false innocence. "Oh no, Derek. Looks like your girlfriend's making new friends." Derek's expression darkened. "Sarah, you shouldn't talk to guys like that. They just want attention." I looked at him, quiet for a moment. I wouldn't have to if I wasn't standing here alone. The tension was thick enough to drown in. Ryan cleared his throat. "Sarah, if you really don't know how to swim, I can show you the basics. It's not that hard." "Sure," I said softly. "Thanks, Ryan." Emily's smile vanished. "Ryan, she's fine. You don't have to—" But Ryan was already in the water beside me. James joined us reluctantly, muttering something about just keeping an eye out. As I moved closer, a sharp pain shot through my leg, a cramp. I gasped and lost my balance, sinking slightly. "Sarah!" James reached for me, his strong arms pulling me up. "My leg," I whispered. "It hurts." Ryan swam closer immediately, concern flashing in his eyes. He grabbed my calf gently, massaging it underwater to ease the tension. The moment was innocent, but the sight must have looked very different from afar. Emily's voice sliced through the air. "James, what do you think you're doing?" He froze. Ryan let go instantly, startled, and in that brief chaos I slipped underwater again, just for a second. When I came up gasping for air, my lips brushed Ryan's accidentally. The sound of Emily's gasp echoed across the pool. The whole world seemed to stop. I pushed away, coughing lightly, still out of breath. Ryan looked mortified, staring at the water instead of me. James was silent. Derek looked furious. Emily stormed toward me, her voice trembling with fake outrage. "Sarah, how could you? You're Derek's girlfriend. You were practically kissing James and Ryan in front of everyone." I blinked at her, stunned at the audacity, but before I could speak, Ryan snapped, his calm facade finally breaking. "That's not what happened," he said, louder than I'd ever heard him. "She cramped up. She was drowning. I helped her." James nodded, his voice rough but steady. "He's right. You're twisting it, Emily." Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. For the first time, the boys weren't standing beside her. They were standing in front of her, blocking her from me, not protecting her from me. The balance had shifted. Derek looked between us all, his confusion written across his face. "Ryan, you're defending her?" Ryan turned toward him, water dripping from his hair. "I'm telling the truth." I stayed quiet, wrapping a towel around myself, pretending to be shaken. Inside, I could feel it, the tide changing. Emily tried to smile again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're all misunderstanding. I didn't mean—" No one listened. I stepped out of the pool, my bare feet cold against the concrete. I could feel every eye on me, but none of it mattered. For the first time since meeting them, Emily wasn't untouchable anymore. And I wasn't just Derek's girlfriend anymore. I was the girl who'd survived her little performance and turned it against her without saying a word. The next morning, the campus felt different. People always say you can feel when rumors start spreading. And they're right. Every hallway seemed louder. Every whisper stopped when I walked by. I kept my head up, pretending not to notice. By lunchtime, Derek had already texted me twice. "We need to talk. Please don't ignore me." I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the cafeteria. And there she was, Emily. She sat at her usual table, surrounded by her boys, or at least what was left of them. James was staring at his phone, detached. Ryan wasn't there. And Derek looked like someone who hadn't slept. I walked past them, tray in hand, and sat at a different table near the window. For the first time, I didn't care if she saw me. A few minutes later, Ryan appeared, holding his lunch. He scanned the room, hesitated, then walked straight toward me. "Can I sit here?" "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. When he sat down, the room got noticeably quieter. You could almost hear the gossip spreading like wildfire. He gave a small, reassuring smile. "Don't mind them." "I don't," I said. "I stopped minding last night." He chuckled softly, eyes fixed on his tray. "Emily's not taking it well. She's not used to losing." That made him look up. For a second, our eyes met, and I saw something new there. Not pity, not curiosity, respect. Before I could say anything else, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Well, this is cozy." Emily stood beside our table, her perfect smile back in place, though her hands were trembling slightly. Her tone was polite enough to fool everyone, except me. "Morning, Emily," I said evenly. "Good morning, Sarah." She turned to Ryan. "And good morning to you, too." "I see you've switched sides." Ryan sighed. "There are no sides." "Of course there are," she said sweetly. "There always are." She looked back at me. "Can I sit?" "You already are," I said quietly. Her smile tightened. "I heard some interesting things today. People are saying you've been close to everyone in the group. James, Ryan, even Derek. Rumors travel fast when someone's desperate," I said. The color drained from her face for a split second before she forced another smile. "You really think you can turn them against me?" "I don't need to. You're doing that yourself." The air around us froze. Ryan set his fork down slowly. "Emily, maybe you should—" "No," she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. "Sorry, I just don't like lies being spread about me." I leaned back, calm. "Then maybe stop creating them." Her eyes flashed. "You're not as innocent as you pretend to be. Neither are you," I said. The cafeteria was completely silent now. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from across the room. Emily stood up, her mask finally cracking. "You think you've won, don't you?" "I think," I said softly, "that I stopped playing your game." She stared at me for a long moment before turning around and leaving, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The second she was gone, conversations resumed, louder, messier, and full of speculation. Ryan looked at me, half impressed, half worried. "You just dismantled the queen bee in front of everyone." "No," I said, picking up my drink. "I just reminded people she bleeds like the rest of us." He smiled faintly, but his tone was serious. "She won't let it go." "I'm counting on it." That evening, I went back to my dorm and lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You have no idea who you're dealing with." I didn't need to ask who it was. Emily had just declared another round. And I was ready. Because now it wasn't about Derek anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about balance. And making sure she finally saw what it felt like to lose control. The next day, the cafeteria buzzed with a kind of tension that didn't need words. Everyone knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. I'd barely walked in when I saw her. Emily. She stood near the center of the room, holding her phone like it was a weapon. Two girls I didn't recognize were standing on either side of her. New recruits, probably. Her replacements for loyalty she'd already lost. She spotted me instantly and smiled. That flawless smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Good morning, Sarah," she said brightly. "Emily? You've been busy lately. I try to stay productive." Her smile sharpened. "Oh, I can tell. Word is, you've been connecting with everyone lately. James, Ryan, even Derek. Impressive." The room went still. People were pretending not to listen, but every ear was on us. Ryan was already sitting a few tables away, watching carefully. "Rumors again?" I asked calmly. "You really don't rest." Not rumors, she said, raising her phone. Screenshots. A few gasps rippled through the tables nearby. She turned the screen toward me, and I saw what she'd done. Fake messages. Dozens of them. Conversations I'd never had. Twisted words that made it look like I'd been flirting with all three guys, like I'd been plotting against her. She'd crafted it perfectly. It looked real, but I'd been ready for this. Cute, I said quietly. But maybe next time, make sure the timestamps match your time zone. She blinked. What? You forgot that when you fake screenshots, the metadata still shows your account. Rookie mistake. I pulled out my phone, scrolling until I found what I needed, the backup I'd made the night before, the message James had sent me, warning me this might happen. Ryan stood up, crossed the room, and stopped right beside me. Let me see, he said, taking my phone. Then he looked at Emily. You sent those messages, didn't you? You pretended to be her. Emily's eyes darted from me to Ryan, her mask slipping. That's ridiculous. No, he interrupted, voice low but firm. What's ridiculous is how far you'll go to stay in control. Murmurs spread across the cafeteria like wildfire. James walked in right then, his timing almost cinematic. He froze when he saw us, then sighed. The kind of sigh that comes from someone who's finally done lying for someone else. She asked me to help fake them, he said flatly. I didn't, but she tried. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her two new followers shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing they'd chosen the wrong side. You really thought you could ruin me with a few fake texts? I asked, my voice steady. You should have stuck with playing innocent. You were better at that. For a moment, I thought she might scream. But she didn't. She just stood there, frozen, her hands trembling around her phone. Ryan looked at her, then at me. Let's go, he said quietly. We walked out together, leaving behind a cafeteria full of whispers and stares. I didn't need to look back to know what they were saying. For the first time, Emily wasn't the center of the story. She was the punchline. Later that evening, I found her again. Not because I was looking for her, but because she was exactly where I expected her to be. The back garden behind the library was empty, except for one figure sitting on a stone bench. Her. No makeup, no entourage, just Emily staring at her phone, her shoulders shaking slightly. If you came to gloat, she said without looking up, go ahead. Get it over with. I didn't, I said softly. I came because I didn't want to win like this. She laughed bitterly. You already did. No, I said, sitting at the far end of the bench. You just finally ran out of people to hide behind. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, do you know what it's like to be told your whole life that you're special? That people love you because you're perfect? And that if you stop being perfect, they'll leave? I looked at her. She wasn't the untouchable princess anymore. She just looked tired. Maybe now you can figure out who you are when you're not performing. She wiped her eyes roughly. You think it's that easy? No, I said quietly. But it's a start. For the first time since we met, Emily didn't argue. She just nodded, almost to herself. When I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. The game was over. I thought that after the cafeteria scene, everything would finally settle. But life never ends neatly, not even when you win. 2 days passed in strange silence. Emily stopped showing up to classes. James switched to a different study group. Ryan kept his distance, though I'd catch him glancing my way from across the library sometimes. And Derek? He lingered, not with the same arrogance as before, more like a shadow that didn't know where to go. One evening, as I was leaving the lecture hall, I heard my name echo down the corridor. Sarah. I turned. Derek was standing near the stairs, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. He looked older somehow, or maybe just smaller. We need to talk, he said quietly. About what? Everything. He ran a hand through his hair, searching for words. I know I screwed up. I need you to understand I never meant to hurt you. I didn't move. But you did. He swallowed hard. When Emily said you pushed her, I panicked. You thought I was the villain, I finished for him. Yeah. The honesty in his voice made something inside me soften, but not enough to forget. Do you even realize, I said, that every time she cried, you made me apologize for something I didn't do? I was trying to protect her. From what? I asked, stepping closer. Reality? He looked down at the floor. She always seemed so fragile. I guess I wanted to be the kind of person who could keep her safe. And what about me? His silence was the answer. You didn't want a girlfriend, Derek, I said finally. You wanted another project. He looked up, eyes glassy. You're wrong. I loved you. No, I said gently. You loved the idea of me forgiving you. That broke something in him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silver ring he'd given me months ago. Simple, plain, the kind that used to feel meaningful. I guess this doesn't belong to me anymore. It never did, I said softly. He nodded. Then, for the first time, he didn't try to argue. He just walked away. And that's when I realized something strange. It didn't hurt. It should have, but it didn't. Because for once, the story wasn't ending with me being left behind. It was ending with me walking forward. Later that week, I ran into Ryan outside the library. He was leaning against a column, reading as always. When he saw me, he smiled. Small, quiet, but real. You look lighter, he said. I am. He closed his book, holding it loosely in one hand. You handled that whole mess better than anyone I've ever seen. I didn't handle it, I said. I survived it. He chuckled. That counts as handling it. We stood there for a while, letting the silence breathe between us. For once, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. So, he said finally, are you done fighting? I think so. Good, he said, stepping closer. Because I was kind of hoping we could start something that doesn't require armor. I laughed. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from myself in months. That sounds nice. Just coffee, he said quickly, as if afraid to push too hard. Or jazz, maybe. Jazz? There's a little place off campus, quiet, no drama allowed. I thought about it for a second, then nodded. Okay, jazz. He smiled, and that small smile felt more honest than any grand gesture Derek had ever made. That night, as I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For once, I didn't look like someone trying to prove something. I just looked like me. And for the first time since meeting Emily, Derek, and all of them, that was enough. The cafe was smaller than I expected. Brick walls, dim lights, the faint hum of a trumpet melting into piano keys. It didn't look like the kind of place where stories began, but maybe that was the point. Ryan was already there when I walked in. He stood to greet me, that shy, unpolished smile lighting up his face. You made it. I said I would. He laughed softly, motioning for me to sit. The table he'd picked was by the window, half hidden, like he'd chosen the exact corner where silence could breathe. The waitress came and left 2 cups of coffee and a slice of pie between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. The music carried the silence for us. You come here a lot? I asked. Used to, he said, when I needed to think. And now? He looked at me. Now I'd rather listen. Something about the way he said it made me smile. I took a sip of my coffee, then looked out the window, watching the streetlights blur against the glass. It's strange, I said quietly. After everything that happened, I thought I'd feel empty, but I don't. That's not strange, he said. That's what healing feels like. It just doesn't get the credit it deserves. I met his eyes again, warm, steady, without a hint of judgment. For months, I'd been surrounded by people who wanted to manage me, fix me, mold me. Ryan just wanted to understand me. You ever get tired of being the calm one? I asked. He smiled faintly. All the time. But if I start yelling too, who's left to listen? That made me laugh. It wasn't the dramatic kind of laugh you fake when you're trying to show you've moved on. It was soft, real. You're not what I expected, I said. What did you expect? Another Derek, I admitted. Someone who'd try to lead the story instead of just being part of it. He tilted his head, thoughtful. You don't need someone to lead your story, Sarah. You just need someone who doesn't rewrite it. The words landed deeper than I wanted them to. For a moment, I forgot about the cafe, the music, the people around us. It felt like the world had quieted just enough for honesty to fit inside it. Ryan, I said slowly, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you defend me that night? You barely knew me. He hesitated, looking down at his hands. Because I saw the look on your face, he said. The one that said, no one's going to believe me, no matter what I say. I've seen that look before. I couldn't let it happen again. It took me a moment to respond. You talk like someone who's lived through the same kind of mess. He smiled, a little sad this time. Maybe I have. I just learned that some people need a truth teller more than a hero. I didn't realize I'd reached for his hand until I felt the warmth of his fingers closing around mine. It wasn't a romantic gesture. Not yet. It was just connection. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was playing a part. The music shifted to something softer, a low saxophone, smooth and almost sleepy. We sat there for hours, talking about nothing and everything, our families, the way campus lights always flicker at midnight, the fact that neither of us actually liked the cafeteria food but ate it anyway. At one point, he laughed and said, "You know, this might be the first night in months that no one's gossiping about us. Give it time," I teased. "They'll find something." He leaned back, still smiling. "Let them. Maybe this time the story will be true." When we left the cafe, the air outside was cool and clear. He walked me back to my dorm, not too close, not too far, just enough. At the door, he hesitated. "Can I see you again?" "You just did." "You know what I mean." I smiled. "Tomorrow, same time?" "You're serious?" "Completely." He grinned. "Then it's a date." He started to turn away, but then paused. "Sarah?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for letting me see the real you." I didn't answer right away, because for once I didn't have to. He waved, shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, and walked off down the path. The night swallowed him slowly until the only thing left was the faint echo of jazz in my head and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, something good was finally beginning. I hadn't seen James since the day he exposed Emily in the cafeteria. He'd vanished. No more group lunches, no more sarcastic comments from across the room. Honestly, I thought he was done with all of us. So when I got a text from him one night that said, "Can we talk?" behind the gym, "I owe you something." I hesitated for a long minute before typing back, "Okay." The back lot behind the gym was half lit by a single street lamp. James was there, leaning against a column, arms crossed. He didn't look angry, just tired. "You came," he said without looking up. "You asked me to?" He nodded slowly, still staring at the ground. "I've been thinking a lot since everything blew up. About Emily. About how we let her control the group for so long." I didn't interrupt. "She didn't even have to try that hard," he continued. "She'd cry, and we'd all jump to fix it. It made us feel useful, like we mattered, and it made her feel powerful." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Exactly. The thing is, I can't even hate her for it. I hate myself for letting it happen." The wind carried the smell of asphalt and late-night rain. It wasn't a comfortable silence, but it was honest. "You were part of it," I said. "But you weren't the only one." "No," he admitted. "But I was the loudest one when they blamed you, and that's something I don't get to erase." I met his eyes. "Then why did you come here tonight? To tell you I'm done." "With what?" "With pretending that keeping quiet makes me loyal." He exhaled, the breath shaky. "I told Emily I'm out. Told Derek too. I'm not doing the hero routine anymore." "Good," I said simply. He glanced at me, surprised by my calm. "That's it? No lecture? No revenge speech?" "I'm tired, James," I said. "I don't want to win anymore. I just want to stop playing." He smiled faintly. "You and Ryan make sense, you know. He's the only one who ever looked at you without flinching. And you?" "I looked at you like competition." He shook his head. "It took me this long to realize you were just trying to survive the same mess as the rest of us." I reached out and offered my hand. "No hard feelings?" He stared at it for a moment, then took it. "No hard feelings." For the first time, James didn't seem like the cocky guy who followed Emily's lead. He looked like someone learning how to think for himself. We stood there a while longer, not saying much. Then he straightened up and said quietly, "Take care of yourself, Sarah." "You too." He walked away, disappearing down the side path that led toward the parking lot. No dramatic goodbyes, no promises, just closure, the kind that doesn't need words. The next afternoon, I spotted Emily again. Not in class, not surrounded by anyone. She was sitting alone on one of the stone benches near the humanities building, notebook open on her lap. For a second, I considered walking past her, but something in me stopped. When she looked up, there was no flash of resentment this time, just quiet recognition. "You don't have to say anything," she said before I could speak. "I know how I looked. I know what I did." I sat down on the opposite end of the bench. "Then why keep doing it?" She shrugged, her shoulders small beneath a plain gray hoodie. "Because I didn't know who I was without it. Being Emily, the one everyone adored, it was the only thing that made sense." For a moment, she looked like any other exhausted college girl trying to hold herself together, the kind of person I might have actually liked in another life. "You still have time to figure it out," I said. You think so? Yeah. Just stop looking for mirrors. Start looking for windows. She blinked, then let out a tiny broken laugh. That sounds like something you'd post on Reddit. Maybe I will. We both smiled, small, cautious smiles. When I stood up to leave, she didn't stop me. She just said, almost to herself, I hope you're happy now. I think I'm learning how to be, I answered. And for once, there was no bitterness in either of our voices. That evening, Ryan texted me, You free? Always. We met by the stone steps outside the main building, the sunset stretching long and golden across the courtyard. He handed me a cup of coffee, still hot. 1 cream, no sugar, he said. You're predictable. And you like that, I teased. I do. We sat there as the campus quieted around us, our shoulders touching lightly. No big gestures, no performance. For the first time, everything felt still. So what now? He asked. I laced my fingers with his. Now we stop fixing people who never asked to be saved, and maybe we learn how to just live. He nodded, smiling softly. I could live with that. The sun slipped below the horizon, leaving us wrapped in the kind of silence that didn't demand anything. It wasn't the start of another game. It was the start of peace. Weeks passed. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Life has a way of returning to normal, even after it's been torn apart. Emily stopped being the center of the campus. She still came to class, sometimes alone, sometimes with a new circle of people who didn't treat her like royalty. She smiled less, but when she did, it looked real. James transferred to evening courses. I saw him once in the library, sitting by himself, headphones on, head bent over a notebook. When he noticed me, he gave a small wave. That was it, and that was enough. Derek drifted somewhere between regret and rebuilding. He started hanging out with other people, quieter ones, the kind who didn't need saving. Sometimes we'd pass each other on the quad. We'd nod, say hi, and keep walking. No bitterness. Just distance. And Ryan. Ryan became part of my routine without ever forcing it. Some days we met for coffee before class. Other days we studied in the library in total silence, communicating through glances instead of words. He never tried to fix me. He just stayed. One Friday evening, we sat on the stone steps outside the main hall, watching the last students disappear into the night. The air smelled like rain and jasmine. He handed me a cup of coffee, and I smiled because he always remembered how I liked it. 1 cream, no sugar. You realize, he said quietly, this is the calm after the storm, right? Feels strange, I admitted. I kept waiting for the next crisis. He looked at me. There doesn't have to be one. That's new. He smiled. Get used to it. We sat there in comfortable silence for a long time, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Eventually, I said, You know what the worst part of all that drama was? What? I forgot who I was when no one was watching. Ryan tilted his head. And who are you now? I thought about it. About the girl who had walked into that friend group ready to compete, to prove, to fight for attention. And about the woman sitting there now, tired, a little wiser, no longer performing. Someone who doesn't need to win, I said finally. He nodded slowly, eyes warm. That's my favorite version of you. That night, I walked back to my dorm alone, not because Ryan didn't offer to walk me. He did, but because I wanted the quiet. The campus was almost empty, the lamps glowing like halos along the path. My reflection followed me in the dark windows, and for the first time, I didn't flinch from it. Everything that had happened, the jealousy, the games, the lies, felt distant now, like a story that used to belong to me but didn't anymore. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the villain. I was just the narrator. And that was enough. When I reached my door, my phone buzzed. A single message from Emily. Thanks for not destroying me completely. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, You're welcome. Take care of yourself. No anger, no satisfaction, just peace. I turned off my phone and crawled into bed. The world outside was quiet, but inside my chest, something new had begun. Not chaos, not fear, not revenge. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I realized the most important thing. The story was never about winning over anyone else. It was about finally choosing myself.